the youth who suffer and will suffer, their children and those generations yet to be born. And that is why the whole issue of generational equity, intergenerational equity becomes very, very, very important. So we are actually destroying their legacy, their future. And they cannot wait until we say it is enough. By the time we say we have destroyed the environment enough, they will be long dead. So it is important. And now you see the youth movement across globally and regionally and nationally. They have decided that they must take up. Let's not wait to be invited, because they have a greater stake in the environment. Yes, there are opportunities here, and already we said green jobs. During COVID-19, the lockdowns, we employed a number of youth to help us do environmental cleanups and so on and so forth. So, and the whole issue of circular economy will come with huge jobs, green jobs, and clean jobs. And yes, there are opportunities, but the young generation have a greater stake and must, as they already are doing, take their rightful position in asserting the right to protection of nature. Thank you.
Thank you, CS. Thank you, Commissioner, for making so much time available. We're now moving to the second set of speakers of this introductory first day on this, and I think you've given us all very good insight. Without further ado, I would like to move to the first speaker in the second round, which is the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, answering maybe the questions of how are we going to pay for this all, both on our side and your side. Cabinet Secretary, may I give you the floor?
Yeah, thank you very much. Firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the EU for organizing this very important forum, especially at a time when Kenya, like other countries, are faced with challenges of COVID-19 and climate change. The government of Kenya considers green finance and cooperation as critical to the full realization of its development goals as set out in the Sustainable SDG Mission 2030, the Big Four agenda that we've recently undertaken to give us a development trajectory, the Paris Accord and the African Union Agenda 2063, among others. It's important for me to mention that Kenya has adopted 6 critical key milestones in the area of green finance and cooperation. Also in the areas of the policies, legislation, and strategy, the achievements in these areas include over 11 policy documents and legislation instruments in the last 10 years, which they include the National Climate Finance Policy, the Green Finance Incentives Framework Policy, the Green Bond Initiative Program, the Bond Issuance Guidelines and Manual, the Kenya Sovereign Green Bond, among very many others, among the 11 that I had mentioned. These developments have put Kenya ahead of its peers on matters of green economy and climate finance, pointing to strong government political support for climate finance, while creating an environment for the collaboration and partnership necessary for the enhanced mobilization of adequate, sustainable, and predictable green finances. This framework will enable the private sector, development partners, and government agencies to work together to deliver optimal outcomes envisioned in the deepening of green financing in Kenya. Secondly, is the area of the national green finance institutional strengthening. The second area is in line of green finance at the National Treasury, where we are mainstreamed, not only in the National Treasury, but at the same time also the line ministries and departments at both the national and the county governments, and providing effective institutional framework for coordination and management of green finance flows through coding, tracking, and reporting. A clear example of public finance management system, which has played a key role in ensuring transparency and accountability for green financing from various sources. This has resulted in greater confidence from partners, enabling tapping to diverse green funding sources like the Green Climate Fund, the Green Climate Investment Fund, and Green Adaptation Fund, among others. Thirdly, in the area of cooperation and devolved green finances, Kenya has put in place this elaborate mechanism with non-state actors, including the private sector, to accelerate mobilization of green financing through public-private multilateral financial institutions. Kenya is indeed found a member of a number of global and continental green finance institutions, coalitions, networks, and partnerships, such as the Coalition for Finance Ministers on Climate Action, the International Sustainable Finance Platform, among others, through which Kenya has done and continues to share our experiences and achievements while playing a leading role in shaping the global green finance agenda. Fourthly is in the area of financing locally led climate action program. The post-COVID-19 economic recovery strategy under the theme Building Better, Back Better, a greener and climate resilient economy, making Kenya stronger, which has input from all 47 counties, continues to recognize the importance of inclusivity from the grassroots in driving the green economy and climate change agenda. This will create opportunities to create the institutional linkages necessary to devolve funds from the national level to the county level to support climate change initiative. The 10-year financing locally led climate action under the National Treasury seeks to mobilize over $1 billion to support the update nationally determined contribution. Over 50% of all counties in Kenya have established county climate change fund and dedicated at least 2% of their development budget to climate adaptation action and to building local climate resilience infrastructure. Fifth is in the area of green finance and how to mobilize for the strategy. Kenya has made impressive progress in mobilizing green finances and developing a system for monitoring, coding, tracking, and reporting green finance mobilization, expenditures, results, and impact to enhance accountability and transparency in line with the Paris Agreement. Kenya recently concluded a landmark study on the landscape of climate finance in Kenya and on the roadmap to implementing Kenya's NDC March 2021, which successfully tracked and placed Kenya's green-related investment, putting close to $2.4 billion. Notably, of this amount, public resources from domestic and international providers accounted for close to 60% of green investment, while the private sector accounted for the balance. Kenya has also attracted and estimated $4.6 billion for green projects and programs in various sectors, with the green energy sector accounting for 40% of flows and related projects. Several green financing windows remain open to Kenya, such as the Green Climate Fund, the Global Environmental Facility, and Adaptation Fund. Outside this framework, a host of bilateral and multilateral funds exist alongside our national budget allocation and private investments by Kenyan companies. In view of this and the need to consolidate and ensure faster transition to a green economy, net zero carbon by 2050, Kenya wishes to expedite the establishment of the Kenya Green Investment Bank to accelerate the mobilization of additional predictable and sustainable green finances to support the public and the private sectors develop bankable green investment pipelines. Kenya will operationalize the Nairobi International Financial Center Authority, which is already in the pipeline. Already a board has been constituted to make Nairobi a formidable center for attracting green investment and green private capital to the region. On the new innovative mechanism for mobilizing green financing, Kenya has developed green financing under the Green Manufacturing and Consumerism Initiative. Kenya has enhanced its fiscal and space for savings through the removal of subsidies and counterproductive to the achievements of its green agenda. Kenya also continues to support the green debt swap, allowing for the redirecting such savings to financing low-emission green investment and the restoration of forest ecosystems, degraded land, and seascapes. We are also expanding and diversifying our donor base to include bilateral and multilateral funding under the framework, while introducing a carbon trading and offset scheme. The government is at an advanced stage in establishing the Kenya emission trading systems, allowing companies and organizations to buy emission allowance and thereby enable Kenya to to meet our commitments in limiting green emissions through certification of emission credits. The system will be managed through the soon-to-be-established the National Carbon Credit and Green Asset Registry. Other key innovative mechanisms we are pursuing the evaluation of Kenya's natural resource capital so as to establish a natural resource base for modernization and application of a nature capital asset in the calculation of our GDP. Additionally, in relation to this, Kenya will soon be launching a sovereign green bond to finance green projects across the country in line with the country's green economy and climate change development agenda. These 6 critical achievements I have outlined summarizes the commitments to the Paris Accord and to green and climate resilient economy. In conclusion, I encourage all of us who are participating in this important deliberation in this two-day event, hope that we'll come up with clear and actionable approaches that will enable our countries to continue taking leading role in realization of ambitious ambitions towards transitioning to a net zero carbon neutral economy by 2050, with the support of the European Union and other like-minded partners of Kenya. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, CS, and thank you for being exactly on time. And as you know, we've been good partners, and we will continue to be good partners to work on this and in other matters for Kenya's development. Without further ado, I want to hand over to the next speaker. From our side, the Vice President of the European Investment Bank, Mr. Thomas Östros. Thank you for joining us today and giving the view also of the European Investment Bank and how to support all of this.
Thanks a lot, Katrin. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, Commissioner, Governor Njoroge, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from Sweden. As Vice President of the European Investment Bank, with responsibility for energy and health issues, and for lending operations in Eastern and Southern Africa, and for overall development policy, it is an honor for me to participate in today's EU-Kenya Green Diplomacy Conference. Last year for the EIB was record high when it comes to our engagement in Africa. In 2020, as part of Team Europe, the EIB provided an unprecedented €5 billion of new financing and technical support for almost 60 high-impact projects across 28 African countries, including Kenya. This financial backing and shared expertise is accelerating private and public investment to strengthen local responses to new health and economic challenges unleashed by the COVID-19 pandemic, unlock private sector investment, accelerate green transition, and improve access to clean energy, drinking water, and key services. EIB engagement in 2020 included our largest ever support for climate action on the continent and in sub-Saharan Africa, whilst 71% of new EIB financing supported investment in fragile states and less developed regions. Africa and the European Union share the common goal of accelerating the green transition and unlocking sustainable development to build a better future after COVID-19. In spite of the challenges of COVID, this partnership has been deepened and enriched in recent weeks. Ahead of the EU-Africa Green Investment Forum, the European Investment Bank and the Portuguese EU presidency brought together more than 3,000 political, development and civil society stakeholders from across Africa and Europe at 26 Green Talks. From Maputo to Berlin and from Luanda to Paris, thousands of development, environmental, financing and policy experts provided insights into successful solutions to harness renewable energy, protect communities from changing climate, building a blue economy, and scaling up high-impact investments to create opportunities and improve lives from accelerating the green transition. The Green Talks included a stimulating discussion on scaling up green investment by private sector partners that took place in Nairobi with East African Community Secretary General Dr. Peter Matuki offering an inspiring opening speech. We were also inspired by Cabinet Secretary Betty Maina's heartfelt intervention during the concluding high-level event in Lisbon on 23rd of April, when we heard about Kenya's ambitions for a green and sustainable recovery. The European Investment Bank is committed to scaling up support for climate action and the green transition in Kenya and across Africa. The EIB has unique expertise supporting renewable energy, energy efficiency, and climate adaptation projects around the world, across Africa, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. As the EU Climate Bank, this experience strengthens the impact of all projects we support and help to reassure our investors. In 2015, the EIB pledged to provide $100 billion for climate action over the next decade. This ambitious target has been surpassed thanks to the vision of public and private project promoters. Looking ahead from 2025, 50% of EIB financing worldwide will support climate action and environmental investment. Our close cooperation with partners in Kenya is already strengthening the impact of investments to accelerate the green transition across Africa. Allow me to highlight 3 examples of visionary Kenyan investment backed by the EIB, inspiring transformational investment also elsewhere. 7 years ago, the EIB and the EU jointly agreed to provide 1/3 of the financing for the 70 billion Kenyan shilling or 625 million euro Lake Turkana wind project. This includes 200 million euro in long-term EIB loans and 25 million euros quasi-equity grant support from the European Union. The Lake Turkana wind power project is part of an ambitious plan to bring power to all Kenyans while making the transition 100% renewable energy. As both the largest single wind farm in sub-Saharan Africa and the largest ever private sector investment in Africa, the Lake Turkana scheme shows how visionary investment can harness green energy to unlock development. Now fully operational, the 365 wind turbines installed on a day over a year are providing a significant portion of Kenya's energy needs and supplying reliable, low-cost wind power to the Kenya national grid. This milestone for clean energy in Kenya was only possible given the close cooperation between Kenya and the European public and private investors who provided 2/3 of financial support. Lake Turkana demonstrates that large-scale renewable energy projects can be built and financed in remote regions of Africa. Climate change threatens the livelihoods of millions of people across Africa. Africa's largest lake, Lake Victoria, is at risk of dying from pollution and climate change. Untreated waste dumped into the lake risk killing off local wildlife and fish stock. The excellent cooperation between the government of Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, and French and German development finance partners, the European Union and the EIB, as well as UN Habitat, is supporting large-scale water and sanitation investment around the lake. In Kenya's 3rd largest city, Kisumu, about 50% of the population had no access to running water, with most people buying water of poor quality and at high cost from water vendors. At the time, only 8% of the residents benefited from continuous water supply. Thanks to a joint support by the EIB, the Agence Française de Développement and the EU, thousands of Kenyans living on the shores of Lake Victoria will soon benefit from transformed access to clean water and improved sanitation thanks to new climate adaptation investments. New investment will be expanding the water and sanitation distribution network in Kisumu, including 2 informal settlements and expanding water supply to the neighboring towns of Ahero and Mazembe. This impressive project will support the preservation of the environment and the fragile ecosystem of the 2nd largest freshwater lake in the world, thanks to improved sanitation leading to reduced pollution. The increased access to clean and reliable water will contribute to improved health, reduced infant mortality, and strengthen efforts to fight COVID-19 through hand-washing stations installed after the pandemic started. This project shows how Team Europe and Kenya are working hand in hand to improve lives. In Kenya and across Africa, the most vulnerable rural communities are threatened by a changing climate and more extreme weather events that destroy agricultural activities and impact micro, small, and medium enterprises. The economic cost of climate change and weather-related events presents a huge financial burden, especially for the world's poorest communities. Households with low incomes and female entrepreneurs are the most vulnerable to these events, as they have few tools to manage risks or savings to fall back on. Consequently, when faced with extreme weather fluctuations such as droughts, floods, and storms, these households may be forced to resort to desperate coping strategies such as selling assets, reducing food consumption, or taking children out of school. The EIB is supporting the visionary Blue Orchard Insu Resilience Investment Fund, led by financial professionals based in Nairobi and Europe, which is strengthening climate insurance in developing countries. It is part of the G20 Insu Resilience Global Partnership that is already protecting 25 million people from climate uncertainty. Climate insurance reduces the vulnerabilities of individuals with low income to climate threats by providing insurance as a risk management instrument. Ladies and gentlemen, as these Kenyan examples show, large and small-scale solutions to scale up climate action exists. Investor support can be harnessed and opportunities unlocked to create green jobs and ensure a better and more sustainable future. As part of Team Europe, the EIB team in Nairobi, our 9 hubs across Africa, and our Luxembourg headquarters stands ready to strengthen existing partnership and embark on new friendship to show how sharing experience and expertise can accelerate climate action, increase high-impact green investment, and deliver sustainable development. Kenya is a land of green and blue opportunities, so let us grasp them together and make it a success. Thank you for your attention.
Asante sana, Vice President. I now have the honor to hand to the next excellency. In Kenya, the environmental agenda is sort of divided between 2 ministries, and we didn't want to leave out any part of it in this conference. So I'm very happy that Your Excellency Najib Balala had time to address us quickly. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and thank you, colleagues and friends of Kenya. Today we are discussing climate change. I think it's timely, and it is interdependent with our economy. Kenya's GDP and benefits from tourism is 10%. So tourism, including wildlife, it's all one, interdependent with climate change. But again, the pandemic has taught us lessons. We have woken up to a new reality of life that we must change, the new norm. And nobody is left out. Anybody going to open up after the pandemic, it must be refreshed opening up. The new norm is very challenging. So everybody who is committed to progress, they must have transformation agenda. The tourism industry is not left behind, neither the wildlife sector has been left behind. So I believe in 3 key fundamentals that needs to be implemented as a lesson after the pandemic. One is the new investment and new model of business, being in tourism, being in wildlife. So yes, definitely the issue of reduction of cost, reskilling and multitasking, the issue of new products and diverse products, the issue of markets. Nobody imagined that there is a market called the domestic market. Not only in Kenya, we tried before, but a lot of countries never appreciated their local and domestic clientele, who happen to be the local people around you. We need to put value to those people. Again, Why is everything being done by one entity? Why don't outsource? PPPs are a good example. Why does government run a convention bureau or a convention facility? Why don't we outsource and make it more efficient? Why does government run a national park? These are the things that needs to be corrected. And this is the time to think again. Well, definitely, there is also the reduction of institutions. How do you make sure that you are lean and effective and efficient? These are things that needs to be rethought again. So number one is new models, new modeling of business, new models of sectors. If we continue as the same model as before the pandemic, I don't think we can be able to progress forward. Number two is technology. Again, we have seen how powerful technology has gone throughout the economy. It's not just about just WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter. I think the whole business economy depends on applications. Actually, it's on sales applications. That's why it's very important to appreciate technology. So the investment of broadband capacity, the investment of smartphones and technologies like that is very key. Issues of, again, drones, the usage of drones. Us in Kenya Wildlife Service, we have almost 6,000 people who are working at Kenya Wildlife Service. Every day we see it's not enough. We need more people. But with technology and now with the drone technology, we can actually remotely manage our sanctuaries, our parks, our reserves through technology. And that is the way to go forward. Definitely, there's so much we can do with technology. Revenue generation, again, need to be digitized. It cannot be manual and analog. It must be different. So this is a wake-up call for the sector, for any sector, to depend on technology to bring efficiency, but also can become accountable. And number three is about environment. Environment and sustainability. For example, wildlife cannot be sustainable if the environment is destroyed. We have seen even the sizes of elephants. The thinning of elephants is because of lack of the right nutrients in the vegetation. A good example, the numbers are going up because we have tamed poaching in Kenya. Yes, we need to do a lot to make sure it's zero poaching, zero markets for ivory and horns, rhino horns. But we need to make sure that the environment is sustained. And my colleague in the Ministry of Environment, Honorable Tobiko, Kariako Tobiko, he's putting efforts in greening Kenya, because without greening Kenya, we cannot have the biodiversity we require. So definitely we see a direct impact, not only on elephants becoming thinner because of the food, but also the animals are leaving the protected areas and now going after farms and agriculture, creating a worst pandemic, which is called the human-wildlife conflict. The minute we lose the goodwill of the local communities, we will lose conservation. And that's why this agenda of human-wildlife conflict must be on the top agenda of the global leaders. Otherwise, we are going to lose conservation agenda with the local communities. There are many innovative ways of financing, green financing, for both conservation, but also in businesses. Again, we have seen the tourism industry. If you're not green, if your power is not green, if your water is not recycled, if your sewage is not treated, then you're going to lose out. Nowadays, the clientele dictates what the investors should do. And that is crucial, because otherwise we are going to lose out. We'll be left behind because the client knows it better than us, the investors. But also there's the issues. If there's one sector that has also misbehaved, it's the tourism industry. Pollution, consumerism, again, the carbon emission of aviation. We cannot do without it, but we need to address carbon emission in a serious manner. So it is important for us to think on the issue of, again, carbon credits. That's very important. The issue of, again, we need to, how do we carbon financing through carbon credits? Establishing of nature fund through collaboration of government and development communities. Establishing of stimulus packages, but they must be green stimulus packages. Reengineering the payment of ecosystem services. How do we do it? Debt swap and conversion for nature. These are fundamental and innovative ways of how do we finance both tourism, but also we can finance the wildlife sector. So mine is to say thank you very much for creating this. My brother, colleague from the Ministry of Environment, European Union, thank you very much. This is the time we need to seriously transform, base our situation on environment and how do we make our businesses green. Thank you very much.
Asante sana, CS. Thank you for those words. We need to use the technologies, new technologies. Thank you. Well, we're working on that for our next programming. EU is not just the institutions in Brussels and the delegations, but it's also the member states. And therefore, we're very happy to have some of them join us as well in this conference. And therefore, it gives me great pleasure to hand the microphone, so to speak, to all the way to Sweden, to ask Her Excellency Ms. Janine Eriksson, the Swedish State Secretary for International Development, to give us the member state perspective maybe on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellencies, esteemed partners from both the Kenyan government and EU countries, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak at this important event. Because as we all know, our planet is in a state of emergency with several crises going on. A global climate crisis, bringing an increasing number of tropical storms, floods, wildfires, and droughts. A biodiversity crisis, with an accelerating extinction of species, raising sharp questions about how our livelihoods depend on our relationship with nature. An inequality crisis, worsened by the socioeconomic effects of the global pandemic, disproportionately affecting those who are already most vulnerable. And a gender crisis, with the global gender gap widening due to the pandemic. And this is here and now and not a distant future. We see the effects all around the world today. If we fail to address these interlinked crises, we will see more hunger, new pandemics, greater injustice and marginalization, more conflicts and forced migration. The health of humans and the health of our planet cannot be separated. We need an urgent transition to fossil-free economies. We need ambitious recovery programs with a human rights and gender perspective that lift the disadvantaged and that set us back on track to redefine relationship with the biosphere. And we need to ensure global action. And this is the time for more cooperation and more determination. This is what our newly strengthened EU-Kenya partnership comes down to. Together, using the opportunities of the EU Green Deal, we must thread a pathway that acknowledges that clean air, arable land, a healthy ocean, wetlands and forests, as well as stable climate conditions are the building blocks of our existence and the human condition. And that we cannot get there without having democracy, human rights, gender equality, women's and girls' empowerment, the foundation of a world that is fair and equal, as our guide. Kenya holds high and progressive ambitions in these areas, manifested in the Kenyan Constitution of 2010 and Vision 2030. However, the challenges are many and are amplified by the current pandemic. The COVID-19 crisis has also thrown many into poverty. A generation of children, especially girls, risk having their education and prospects for a good life irreversibly damaged. Sweden's role is one of partnership and friendship. Cornerstones of our engagements are a feminist foreign policy, a clear drive for democracy, prioritization of climate financing, and a new biodiversity initiative. These are our policy priorities within the EU, with Kenya, as well as Africa as a whole, and the entire world. This is what guides our commitment to building back better and greener, including our partnership role in the soon-to-be launched African Union Green Recovery Action Plan. Sweden and Kenya have a close and long-standing relationship, dating since independence. We have a joint commitment to 2030 agenda. Our relationship is structured around a comprehensive cooperation strategy covering democracy and human rights, environment, climate change, and sustainable management of natural resources, and sustainable inclusive growth. For example, Sweden invests with a strong focus on poverty reduction, in community-led adaptation in Kenya, in sustainable natural resource-based value chains, in water supplies and catchment management, in climate-smart agriculture, and in renewable energy. And I look very much forward to visit Kenya in the near future to discuss this further. Because there is no time to waste. Looking ahead, we must see ambitious and decisive outcomes of the 2 COPs in Glasgow and Kunming this fall. We must ensure that financial flows, both public and private ones, both national and international, are Paris-aligned and Kunming compliant. Much is being done in this direction, and several actors are beginning to step up, realizing that their future must be fossil-free and nature-positive. But even more remains to be done if we are to bring about the transformative change needed to turn our relationship with nature around, while ensuring sustainable livelihood and economic recovery. Not only is this desirable, it is an inevitable investment that will create opportunities and improve well-being for both people and planet. The world has set important goals through multilateral agreements and in the context of Agenda 2030. Our mutual commitments to accelerating action on these is reflected in 2 important events in 2022, namely UNEP at 50 and Stockholm Plus 50. Sweden, as the host of Stockholm Plus 50 in June 2022, and Kenya as host country for UNEP, have agreed to join hands on ensure that these important events, the UNEP at 50 and the Stockholm Plus 50, will contribute to invigorated and modernized environmental multilateralism, as well as complement each other and be mutually reinforcing. We regard UNEP at 50 as an important and essential moment to commemorate UNEP and its remarkable achievements since it was established after the first global conference on the environment in 1972. Striving to contribute to the decade of action on implementing the 2030 agenda, we envision a Stockholm Plus 50 that contributes to redefining our relationship to nature by advancing green, just and inclusive post-pandemic recovery and accelerating the transition towards sustainable consumption and production, leaving no one behind. We must expect a lot of ourselves and of each other. That is a chance to take the next step to define our future on this planet. And our plan may seem ambitious. I would argue that we should raise the bar even further. We must remember what is at stake here. It is about our life, all our lives, on our planet. The human pressure on wildlife will breed the next pandemic. An acidic ocean will not feed growing human populations. And degraded land will not provide protection against the effects of climate change. Our livelihoods and our economies are dependent on the biosphere. There is no long-term alternative to live in harmony with nature. And we can do this. As we speak, land is being restored to provide natural friendly production. Local communities are finding new solutions for sustainable livelihoods. Marine protected areas are increasing in numbers and size. Governments commit to new emission targets. And together we can, and we must, scale up what works and end what doesn't, and look towards a green and fair future. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Together we can and we must. Asante sana. Thank you for giving us this perspective from one of our member states. We have two more member states, but before we turn to them, we've been talking also about how to finance. We've heard from the European Investment Bank, but it's also good to hear locally from the banks. And therefore, I'm very, very pleased that His Excellency, Mr. Patrick Njoroge, the Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, is able to join us today as well. Welcome, Your Excellency. Good to see you again.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to be with you today and grateful to the organizers for arranging this important conference. We meet at an important conjuncture where the ravages of floods, droughts, and other natural catastrophes continue to impact Africa, Kenya included, despite contributing the least to global emissions. We also meet as the global discourse increasingly shifts to recovering from the coronavirus pandemic and restoring the livelihoods shattered by the pandemic. Transitioning to a green economy will be at the heart of sustainable growth and shared prosperity for our citizens. At the Central Bank of Kenya, our vision is for a banking sector that works for and with Kenyans. The sector should not only provide financial services, but should also ensure they meet the needs of customers while also being aligned to environmental, social, and governance considerations. In a nutshell, we aspire for a world where all financial services are green, and each step brings us closer to that goal. What have we achieved so far towards realizing this vision? I will highlight 3 milestones. First, in 2015, the Kenya Bankers Association launched the Sustainable Finance Initiative. The Sustainable Finance Initiative is aimed at raising awareness on environmental, social, and governance risks and financing within the Kenyan banking sector. KBA, through the Sustainable Finance Initiative, has set up a comprehensive online training designed to enable financiers to create long-term value for the economy, society, and the environment. Currently, 38 banks are participating in the training, and over 30,000 bankers have been enrolled. Second, the first corporate green bond in Eastern Central Africa, issued by the Econ Group, was listed at the Nairobi Securities Exchange in January 2020. The bond was also admitted on the international security market segment at the London Stock Exchange in January 2020. Third, in November 2020, KCB Bank, Kenya's largest bank, was accredited by the United Nations Green Climate Fund as the first financial intermediary of the implementation of green financing in East Africa. As you are aware, the GCF is the world's largest climate fund, mandated to support developing countries raise and realize their nationally determined contributions, NDCs, ambitions towards low emissions, climate resilient pathways. It is a critical element of the historic Paris Agreement. While acknowledging these milestones, a lot more needs to be done to green Kenya's financial system. Accordingly, in this year of climate action, in the lead up to COP26, we will work with the banking sector to develop guidelines on climate risk assessment and embedding climate-related financial reporting disclosures in the financial sector. Green finance presents significant opportunities to banks and other financiers. However, as regulators, we must always be alive to climate risks. Climate risk is a growing threat to the financial sector, from physical risk to the loan portfolio arising from, among others, floods and drought. Further, transition risk may arise from the move to clean energy with abandonment of previous well-entrenched energy sources such as coal. Bank customers, therefore, may be left with obsolete stranded assets that were used to secure loans. We must therefore provide guidance to banks on how to identify, measure, and mitigate climate risk. Further, as a regulator, we need to incorporate climate risk in our prudential surveillance framework, pursue our core mandate of financial stability. On disclosures, we do not intend to reinvent the wheel, but rather draw from the task force on climate-related financial disclosures. The task force designed a set of recommendations for consistent disclosures that will help financial market participants understand their climate-related risks. Beyond the disclosures, the structuring of the recommendations around the core institutional elements of governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and standards and targets will embed integration of climate-related risks and opportunities in banks. In our climate action agenda for Kenya's banking sector, we cannot walk alone. In the world proverb, you want to go far, go together. We will strive to walk with others on the same path, but who are farther ahead. In this regard, cooperation with the EU, the European Union, and in particular the European Investment Bank is pertinent. We note the European Investment Bank's transformation to being the EU's climate bank with an associated climate bank roadmap 2021-2025. The European Investment Bank has been actively supporting Kenya's private sector development through the provision of medium to long-term funding to commercial banks for on lending to small and medium-sized enterprises and micro-enterprises as well. In the past 10 years, the European Investment Bank has availed over 300 million euros to Kenyan banks to support critical sectors including agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, transport, construction, health, and education. We look forward to continued support from the European Investment Bank to Kenya's commercial banks as they embark on the climate action journey. The support required will also include technical and advisory support as we green our financial system. We remain committed to working with our development partners, including the EU, private sector, and other stakeholders to ensure that Kenya stays at the forefront of innovation in green finance in Africa. I look forward to the outcomes of this important conference as we build global collective momentum in this year of climate action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Asante Sana, for speaking. We aspired for a world where all financial services are green. That's, I think, a worthy aspiration, and that's where we need to go to. We can and we must, as our Swedish colleague was saying. Thank you very much, and we look forward to continued work with you, and in particular between EIB and you, the central bank. It's been a long day, but we still have two more speakers. We're going back to member states. We have the Mr. Thomas Anker Christensen, the climate ambassador for Denmark.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yes.
And I hope I can keep you alive and awake. I'm very energized by especially the strong interventions by our Kenyan colleagues, and I really want to congratulate them for the leadership that Kenya is taking in Africa, including the submission of the revised NDC and the impressive work on clean energy. And like Sweden, we are happy to work with Kenya in our support to the Lake Turkana project. And really the commitment by President Kenyatta to achieve 100% clean energy before 2030 sets an ambition for others to follow. So the Danish Prime Minister was very happy to be with President Kenyatta in the recent Biden summit and listened very attentively to his intervention. It is great that Kenya has also committed to submit its long-term strategy for 2050 before COP26. And with Kenya's strong climate policies, we think the next step is to ensure implementation. Also when it comes to adaptation action, and Denmark is happy to support Kenya in this endeavor, including through our development program and strategic sector cooperation, which I'll come back to in a moment. I also, Catherine, wanted to thank you and the EU for the Team Europe spirit with which we are working with Kenya, including on this event. The climate and green transition as a flagship area for the EU and for us is really has really put us on the map, and we're very happy to participate actively in this work. And I think Denmark in Nairobi also co-hosts the subgroup on circular economy, and we are very happy also from Copenhagen about this cooperation. So let me structure my few remarks around what we're doing as Denmark, what we're doing to scale up especially climate finance and the cooperation with Kenya, a few words on the private sector cooperation and the upcoming P4G summit where Kenya is also an active participant, and then finally a few words about COP26 and the CBD15. What have we done in Denmark during lockdown? We took action on green recovery by actually moving forward on climate ambition nationally, in setting ourselves a 70% emission reduction target for 2030 that was passed by law a year ago in June, in the middle of lockdown, with a climate neutrality for 2050 target, but also with action plans on all the major tracks of the Danish economy in close collaboration with the Danish private sector. We have a plan for decarbonizing our energy production probably by 2028, decarbonization of industry with a focus on cement, transport with a focus on electric vehicles, buildings and energy efficiency, waste and circular economy, where we are moving away from incineration and towards a lot of recycling, water, and this year we are still politically working on agriculture, land use, forests, and a green taxation scheme. So, I mean, we are embedding the recovery into our financial policies and a whole of government approach nationally, and we're also then trying to take this to the global stage. And my role is to help our ministers to, in a way, see how we can take our national ambition and create global action through the European Union, but also in our bilateral cooperation with countries like Kenya. We have 5 areas of focus in our global strategy. It's ambition, reducing emissions, adaptation, greening of financial flows, and finally private sector cooperation, including through value change of Danish companies and production abroad, and an area like shipping where Denmark is taking lead both with Maersk in a Getting to Zero coalition on shipping, but also in a new project that we're about to launch on mission innovation for shipping, where we hope also that Kenya with its ports could be a strong partner. These 5 areas are sort of woven through our bilateral cooperation, and I will come back to both ambition and emissions and adaptation and finance and private sector when I talk about Kenya, but just to work on climate finance, maybe to start there. We are in the process of drawing up a new development finance strategy. It will be done later this year in the run-up to Glasgow, and we expect it to increase quite significantly the climate focus of our funding, not only for this year, but for the years to come, including with the Paris alignment of all our grants, pushing for development assistance to really be low carbon and climate resilient. Bilaterally, we have already almost doubled our funds to climate over the last 3 to 4 years, and we expect that level to go up again significantly. We are at a current level of about $0.4 billion. We're also focusing on mobilizing climate finance through our National Development Finance Institution, Investment Fund for Developing Countries, but also through the MDBs. And in our calculation, we are roughly right now at about $0.5 to $0.7 billion, which makes it a total a bit more than $1 billion in bilateral and mobilized financing, but also with an increased focus on adaptation. We think we are roughly at 50-50, maybe a little more to the mitigation side, but financing for that adaptation is expected to significantly increase in the coming years. So at COP26, we want to work with Africa, with the LDCs, with the vulnerable countries to ensure that their special needs are met, also, of course, through the EU, in particular in relation to adaptation, and that this is reflected in COP discussions and decisions. With Kenya, for the last 5 years, the Danish Environmental Protection Agency has worked with the Kenyan Ministry of Environment and Forestry and the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Cooperatives on strengthening regulation and management of resources, solid waste and wastewater in Kenya. That's through our government-to-government program, where Danish expertise, know-how, solutions, and good practices are shared with partners to promote framework conditions for sustainable development and green transition. And we're about to embark on the next phase, which focuses on circular economy, on resource efficiency, specifically with regards to producer responsibility, waste data management, compliance and inspection procedures, and so on. So we are trying to turn policies into practice and making actual change within waste management. We are also, and that's interesting in the Kenyan context, I just wanted to mention, increasing our contribution to UNEP. We have tripled it over the last few years, and we are now one of the few countries who contribute above the so-called fair share to the Environment Fund. And even though UNEP might be a small UN agency, we do think we need to listen to UNEP's voice. It provides science-based policies and solutions to our global environment crisis, not only about financing, but also about ensuring that the right solutions are available in the right place at the right time. And we think UNEP has a significant role in raising the environmental agenda to a political level and strengthening the coordination of global environment policies and strategies at regional and national levels. On P4G, the summit is coming up at the end of May. President Kenyatta will be one of the few speaking live at the summit. So will the Danish Prime Minister. I think President von der Leyen has also committed her participation, and a few other EU partners will be there, hopefully live. Kenya is taking a very active role. It has a strong national platform co-chaired by the Permanent Secretary of Treasury and the chairman of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. And we're very happy and proud that that's happening. It is the biggest P4G country in a number of partnerships, active in 14, for example, sustainable special economic zones, where the Danish company NERAS, sustainable water access, with Grundfos are very active partnerships. So we do think that platforms and models like P4G are valuable to strengthen partnerships and really welcome Kenya in that regard. Also bilaterally with the Danish Confederation of Industries, we're working to pilot a version of the Danish Climate Partnership that we've done in Denmark and to export in a way that model to Kenya. We have a strong presence and work closely with the Kenyan Association of Manufacturers in a Kenya-fied model that could hopefully work also across Africa and will contribute to Kenya's target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 32%. Finally, COP26 and CBD 15. We are very happy to be working with Kenya in the Energy Transition Council, where the EU is also very active, and we think working on energy transition ambition to be showcased in Glasgow is really important. We have to come out of Glasgow showing that the 1.5 degree target remains within reach, both through ambition, through action, and through the outcome of the negotiations. And similarly, at the Biodiversity Summit, and many other speakers have spoken at length about it, so I won't go into too much detail, but we really need to show that that link between climate and biodiversity is there and that we are able to take global action jointly. And I think Europe and Africa, through also Kenyan mediation, are great partners in advancing this. So we are looking at a scaled up trajectory of ambition throughout 2021, where this crescendo that we had hoped for last year will hopefully, despite of COVID and despite of all the restrictions we are facing as a global community, can take place in 2021, and thus make 2021 a year of hope and ambition, as we hopefully all will be able to turn our back to COVID and focus on tackling the climate challenge in the future. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Asante sana. Thank you very much to Denmark, and thank you for giving you the member states' perspective from what you've been doing, both nationally and also in your outreach within the EU and globally. Thank you very much for that. And I like the crescendo up to the COPs for this year as a musician. I think that's a nice analogy. We have one more climate envoy coming up. And I'm very happy to welcome the last speaker, and not a real expert on Africa. There has been in the region until quite recently as EU head of delegation. So I'm very happy to see her in this new role as the Irish climate envoy, Your Excellency, Ms. Sinead Walsh. Thank you for joining us, and I hand you the floor.
Thank you so much, Katrine. It's great to see you, and greetings also to all the excellencies. It's been quite a star-studded morning, and I've really enjoyed getting more up to speed with what's going on in Kenya, which is a country that's close to my heart, and I think this conference is really timely and really critical, as all the colleagues have said. So it's a great opportunity to be here. Ireland's relationship with Kenya is of really critical importance to us, and I think there's a lot more that we can do in terms of climate collaboration in particular. Bilaterally as well as part of the EU group. But what I was asked to focus on today is actually a specific topic, which is the area of climate and security. This is a key priority for the EU and for Ireland at the UN Security Council, where we're serving as the co-chair of the informal expert group, the new group that's been established along with Niger, and I'm aware this is a really key issue for Kenya. So I will just say a few words about this. I think what we're seeing at the moment is increased agreement across the Security Council and indeed across members of the General Assembly on the importance of tackling the drivers of insecurity, including climate change, if we're going to address insecurity. And this is really at the core of the climate and security agenda. And as Katrine said, I have spent some years in the Horn of Africa, most recently in South Sudan, and I don't think I need to convince a group of government officials and diplomats based in Kenya and Kenyan citizens listening in of these kinds of links and of the major impacts that climate change is already having in terms of temperature, in terms of flooding, in terms of droughts, in terms of, as we would have seen in South Sudan, difficulties of finding grazing land for cattle, and the way in which these sorts of dynamics then put communities under even more pressure, and communities already maybe affected by conflict were found that this was really exacerbated. So I think from a Horn of Africa perspective, it's not difficult to make that connection, and I think across the broader Security Council we are seeing more and more recognition about this. But I think a really key thing for Ireland is not just to think about climate risk and insecurity, but also to turn the topic around and think about the possible peace dividends of climate action, and that's really what we are trying to sort of bring to the table. So in our role as co-chair of the Informal Expert Group in New York, we're working with the members, trying to see how we can build our understanding of the links between climate change and insecurity, but also what are some of the really good lessons that we can all learn from in terms of how climate action can lead to a sustainable peace. Really want to commend Kenyan colleagues for the focus that you're putting on this. We hear your voice on this loud and clear. In New York, we also know very much at the AU PSC that Kenya is a real leader on this, and the recent AU PSC communique, I think, is just I think a testament to Kenya really pushing this issue, and I know it's you named it as one of, I think, maybe four priorities for your Security Council tenure. So it's a great, I think, area for partnership. And I think we believe that this year there is a real opportunity to advance the agenda of climate and security, maybe in a more systematic way. The US re-engagement is extremely helpful, of course. That shifts the dynamics also, and we find that there's a lot of like-minded member states, obviously the EU and Kenya and Niger, but more and more. And recently, we heard China also speaking with more, I think, engagement on this topic, talking about the Security Council being able to play a bigger role within its mandate on climate issues. And with COP26 approaching, as everybody has talked about, there is, I think, a window of opportunity this year to build on this kind of momentum and to make progress, which could mean, for example, a global resolution on climate and security when the time is right. Now, we would be very conscious that any resolution would have to build on previous efforts. Germany have also done a huge amount on this issue. Swedish colleagues, of course, have been pivotal in establishing the climate security mechanism. And we would want to, if a resolution were going to be put forward by a group of like-minded, we would want it to build on those efforts and very much to be a collective effort that represented also different regions and different starting points, as it were. But we think this could be a historic moment for the UN to really kind of take on this issue in a more systematic way, and send also signals to other organizations on the need to address climate change. And I think we're very optimistic from an Irish perspective. We have an extremely strong record of working with Kenya on the Security Council. Colleagues will know that, of course, Ireland and Kenya co-chaired the negotiations for the adaptation of the SDGs. So we have some experience in brokering historic agreements at the UN, and hopefully we might be able to do something together and with other colleagues on this particular issue. Maybe just to add, at the EU level, we're doing quite a lot together on climate-related security risks. That our foreign ministers at the Foreign Affairs Council have really committed to this and have committed to working with the UN on things like early warning systems. And also, I think, coming back to the points that my Danish colleague was just raising about support to LDCs and support to SIDS. We also very much see climate and security and adaptation as two sides of the same coin, because it's support to adaptation and resilience, which is a huge priority for Ireland, that also helps reduce some of these risks of insecurity. So through the EU's strategy on adaptation, we're looking at adaptation as a tool in terms of these conflict issues. And finally, just on the blue economy issues that have come up, I just wanted to really thank Kenya for its leadership. The oceans issue is a huge priority for Ireland. We have 10 times as much sea as we have land, so I think like many islands, we take this very seriously, and the links between climate, the ocean, and also, in fact, security issues as well are very clear. We're seeing the sea level rises, the impact on coastal communities, the undermining of livelihoods. And, I think a few speakers today have talked about, really good work that's ongoing on the blue economy in Kenya. But also Kenya's global leadership on this is really critical. And we're looking forward to that SDG 14 high-level dialogue, and also the UN Oceans Conference that Kenya is playing such a crucial role in. So just to finish by saying, both as from an Irish perspective and from an EU perspective, we really look forward to working more with Kenya, to learning more from Kenya and how you're working on these issues, and to kind of providing mutual support, and also taking co-leadership roles on some of these global issues at the Security Council and beyond. So thanks so much for giving me the opportunity, and I look forward to working further together.
Asante Sana, thank you very much for this, and thank you to all of the speakers. I think it's been a very inspiring session with lots of good presentations. And we've been getting some questions, so I will now open up the floor a little bit to some of the questions that we have gotten for those speakers who still are able to join us on this. The first question I'm seeing here is more related, let's say, looks more at the Kenyan perspective. So our Kenyan speakers, stay alert. How do the efforts that we undertake now complement and fit into Kenya's green economy implementation strategy of 2016 that was developed obviously earlier? What are you doing now that complements that? Maybe CS, you would like to take a stab at that question?
Yes, indeed. The green growth and employment strategy and action plan of 2016 to 2030 is a blueprint on how to green our economic development as we progress to a low carbon development growth trajectory. So a lot of it has been the implementation stage now, and it's one of our key documents, and both informing our post-COVID recovery strategy. It is also, as we developed our sustainable waste management strategy and policy and bill, a lot of the strategies and brilliant ideas and informed. So it is a document. It is a document really that provides the implementation framework for the blueprints that we currently are working on, including actually substantially informing our climate action plan for 2018 and to 2022, as well as our revised NDCs, and of course, it's a reference point, as I mentioned earlier. One of the documents we're referring to in our development of the various models under the long-term strategy. So it is a critical document in all that we are doing currently, yes.
Asante, I think question number 2 still goes to you, but then after that it gets a little bit more varied. So don't fear that you're the only one who is now being targeted. Maybe this is because that's how the questions came in as the speakers started speaking. The second question is a bit more along the lines of climate change. Kenya, you've already have a national adaptation plan and a national climate change action plan. Are we duplicating the efforts or creating a parallel effort?
No, not at all. Not at all. Mitigation and adaptation are not separate things. They're not. They are really. They're really two sides of the same coin. As we talk about mitigation, and this obviously talks about a reduction of our greenhouse gases emission. But also we must talk about the climate impacts, how to deal with the consequences of climate change, which is real and is with us. And of course, understandably, for the longest time, the focus has been on mitigation. But if you look at it, I mean, for Kenya, for example, and Africa, our emissions really is about 0.0 something percent. Yet the effect is about 3% on our GDP, and Africa maybe 4. I think so. Really, for us, we don't want to engage in sort of this dichotomy between mitigation and adaptation. I think it is one and the same. You cannot address one without the other. And when I talk about adaptation, that similarly implies community building, community resilience. So for us, it is not either or, it is both. And I think the 50-50 formula that is being discussed really to us makes a lot of sense.
Oops, sorry. Asante sana. The next question I think I can open up a little bit more and is actually a bit more philosophical, but still an interesting one. If digital will be essential for environment, should access to digital devices and being online be a new basic need? Anybody want to dare to answer that one?
Sorry, moderator,
We didn't get the question.
All right, repeat the question. If digital will be essential for the environment, should access to digital devices and access to being online be a new basic need? Or basic right, maybe?
May I take that?
Sure.
Thank you, Governor here. I don't know if I want to sort of raise it to the level of human rights, or for that matter, some sort of broad platform such as that. I don't think it's necessary to raise it to the levels of justice, human dignity, etc. Those I think we understand well. But that notwithstanding, it is important to acknowledge that access to digital platforms, or for that matter, access to the financial sector through the digital platform, one way or the other, will become the norm. As it is in Kenya, it is the norm. And what we need to do, of course, is to deepen it even more. As you know, financial access at this moment is north of 85%. And and actually in terms of just having the digital devices, that is more than 100% in terms of coverage of adult population. So I think the point here is this is a tool, this is an opportunity that is presented to us to achieve precisely what the questioner had in mind. But I think we need to look at it as a tool. At the end of the day, what is important is that people do have access to the financial sector. And as we say, from our perspective, the financing will really need to be green in the long run. But in one word, I think I would also add that really what we need to have is a more democratization of financial services. And with the platforms that we now have, I think we are on the way in that direction. Thank you.
Just to follow up with what the governor said, and I think speaking on the area of confidentiality of banking institute, but overall, and in our constitution, the right to access information is enshrined in the constitution. It's the right of every Kenyan to, of course, it is not an absolute right. And also in our Climate Change Act, there is an obligation on government to make available for the citizens the information regarding that may implicate climate change and so on and so. Again, it is not an absolute, so there are very limited exceptions, and where it deals with issues of personal data, and so the data protection aspect. So it has to be looked at. Yes, the right to access information, including, of course, digitally, because public participation, and for them to be able to meaningfully participate, they need access to information, and information also not just in hard form. But it's not an absolute. There are very, very, very rare exceptions where that right. But it is the duty of a person, a government institution that is denying citizen that right to demonstrate and justify that denial.
May I, Katrin? This is Thomas.
Please.
Yes, let me just say that I think there are interesting parallels here between the incredible development in Kenya when it comes to leapfrogging into, for instance, mobile payment systems. That has been a tremendous development and open up the opportunities for people in a way that was not foreseen before the digital revolution. I myself come from Sweden. Sweden is also in a huge transition when it comes to these type of issues. Actually, currency, as we know it, banknotes and coins are practically disappearing from the economy because of the digital development. So here, mobile and digital payments are crowding out the traditional way of paying. This gives tremendous opportunities, but it also has challenges in both our countries, I guess, because access is not always equally divided. There can be a generational divide where people feel that they are coming a little bit further away from their opportunities. So I think you also need a conscious policy to see to that we spread the access and the knowledge to use digital instruments, not to create a digital divide within our society. So it's a tremendous development to follow, a good example for the rest of the world, development in Kenya, but also challenges to see to that we really creates an environment where all citizens have access. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent to get a little bit of discussion going among you. And indeed, there are very many aspects to digital and how digital can both help and further sort of our fights against climate change. So thanks for that question. I have a question on finance options. So I'm glad I still have both the governor and the vice president online. But also, I mean, others, please jump in. We've mentioned several innovative financing options, from the green bonds to climate fund, carbon offsetting, payment for ecosystem services, etc. is there one that you would particularly highlight as relevant for Kenya, as something that, or presenting a challenge for Kenya that we should maybe focus on in our continued work together to make sure we get it right?
Okay, may I take that? Thank you.
Please.
I think a key area is working with the SMEs, the medium and small and medium-sized enterprise, micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. Not because they are small from that perspective, that's not what is so attractive about them. But the attractiveness about them is really in terms of the numbers of people that are connected to them and at all levels. So I think, and it has to be pretty much a sort of not just one issue, meaning financing, let's say, but rather it has to be a holistic solution for them. So to the extent that we can do that, I think will in a sense leapfrog in another dimension. So that is the one point I would want to put on the table. And the EU obviously has been helping us in various ways. We've had discussions, and the EIB as well. We've had discussions, for instance, in the context of having a credit guarantee scheme, etc. But there are other things we need to do, but that is the one thing I'll probably put on the table. Thank you.
I very much agree with the governor there. And I think for us, we are constantly looking for local and national partners to be able to reach to small and medium-sized businesses. And that is, of course, local banks that can be very helpful in that respect, where we go into a deep cooperation, provide guarantees or other types of financial instruments, sort of with the condition that the bank itself commits to see to that these resources finally end up with smallholder farmers or other types of small businesses. And I think this type of partnership is extremely fruitful because the knowledge is, of course, within the region, within the local banks. But we can provide also financial instruments and support that we from the European Investment Bank can sort of see to finally reaches also the smallholder farmers. So this is an area where we very much would like to continue cooperate, both in Kenya and elsewhere, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have favorite financing models they would like to highlight? All right, then I'll move to the next question. What are we're seeing, we all know, I think, that we need to get private partnerships into the discussion around whether it's on climate or on biodiversity. But what are some of the existing nature businesses that EU and Kenya in the private sector could work on together?
If I may, Catherine, I don't want to monopolize this discussion from the European side, but I see two areas with a lot of possibilities going forward. One is, of course, the greening of the economy, and I'm thinking foremost of renewable energy. There you have the need for investment in both the grid to distribute energy, but also when it comes to solar and wind power. There's such a tremendous technological development we are in the middle of with reduced costs. And there I think we have great opportunities to work together. And connected to that, of course, the whole discussion on hydrogen going forward. What the COVID crisis has revealed, I think, in many countries inside Europe and outside Europe is vulnerabilities in healthcare systems. And I think this will be very high up in many discussions. Also when it comes to countries in Africa, what are the most important investment in healthcare that we see ahead to remedy some of the weaknesses that we have seen in the system. Thank you.
I see you still speaking, but I can't hear you. Is that just my problem? Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that. And anybody else wanted to discuss, to take that question, or shall I continue with the next question? I don't want to cut anybody off. All right, we have another question on climate change, seems to be, but this time more towards the Kenyan side. Since climate change it's a public good, it's in a sense no man's duty. What is the government doing to curb down the drastic climate change, which is in itself is causing destruction of the healthy environment? This came from our KTN channels. So this is more geared towards the Kenyan side, but I think, as we said, it's a global public good. So to a certain extent, it also asks the question of everybody.
Sorry, is the question? Sorry, I seem to what Kenya is doing to combat climate change.
Yes.
Yes. Of course. Yeah, climate change. We, as already mentioned in our presentations by all myself and my colleagues, we signed and ratified the Paris Agreement. I think one of the first countries to do so. We have domesticated it. We have enacted legislation and policy instruments, strategies and action plans. We delivered our original NDCs and commitments in 2016, 2015, 2016. We have just delivered our revised edition, working. So there is a whole range of interventions, undertaking a huge, massive public education and awareness campaigns, and so on and so forth. So yes, climate change is top on the agenda of the government.
Thank you. And I think the fact that we have several climate envoys, on the call also from the European side, shows how much of a top priority it is also on our end, and how we are trying to find ways to make this to combat climate change. I think the thing that shows it is, again, the finance aspects. Many of the instruments that we have on the financing side are actually ways to internalize that public good, so that we do make, and you have various ways of polluter pays, etc., that also feed into that, and making sure that we combat this effectively. These were sort of the main questions that we got up to now. More specific questions, I think we have experts tomorrow also, not that, CS obviously, and as you're also an expert, but we have some of the people who work on this in more detail in the sessions tomorrow. So there's still a chance, if you didn't get around to answering your question yet, asking a question yet, or getting it answered, we will go into more detail on this tomorrow. For me, it has been a very inspiring session, and I really want to thank all of the distinguished speakers for their enriching presentations, and also the public for very pertinent questions that we have received. I think today's session has set an excellent tone and provided very rich inputs to our conversation that will continue tomorrow at more technical level, where we will have the opportunity to discuss the excellent ideas and policies in more details. We are encouraged by this optimistic vision with the European Green Deal and Kenya's leadership as the global environmental and climate diplomacy champion. We are going to make peace with nature. We've heard that repeatedly, and I'm optimistic that we are going to see a swift transition to sustainable green business and financing models, and a more peaceful and safe world. To use some of the ideas floated in today's intervention, another one that I particularly liked was Kenya's potential in green and blue economy. We of course need to mobilize many other many others around the world to enact the global transition and recovery from the unsustainable economic models in the current pandemic to a truly sustainable, clean, more circular, climate neutral, and nature positive economy. And for mobilizing that, we need to use the various fora that we are in. And we have UNEP here, and we are discussing here. We have heard from our Irish friends also the importance of raising this even at the UN Security Council, where Kenya currently is. But we have other